So some of you may know now that I've been working in the animation industry for over a year now, and I just wanted to offer a little insight on what that's been like. Because when I was like researching this stuff in uni for going off to try and find a job, I really found reassurance and insight on videos like this. So I thought I'd like uh, broadcast my experience to this side of YouTube, like with the map community and all you cool cat guys and all that. Just thought I'd let you know how it's been. But I'm gonna offer a disclaimer, very important disclaimer, that this is from my experience, so don't take what I say to heart. This is just what it's been like for me. Every studio works differently, studios in different countries work differently, people have different experiences, and the industry changes all the time. So this is just me speaking from what it's been like for me this past year, and not like how it is set in stone. Since July 2018, I've been working in a decently big studio in England. We make preschool TV shows. You know, they're very goofy, very colorful. There's a lot of people in the studio and a lot of departments. Some studios won't be like that. Some studios can be like 10 people or less. This one is maybe 200. I got the job through an interview at my uni, which I was very lucky to have. The animation director for this studio came down to my uni, as my uni's got quite a good reputation, and he asked our tutors if they recommend any of the 2D animators, and luckily I was put forward for an interview. So I had this interview and it was very nice, very casual. We just sat together and looked through my portfolio, my show reel. He asked some questions, I asked some questions, and it was very casual, nice, and he was very nice to talk to. After that, maybe a week or two later, I got an email saying that I passed on to the next stage of the application process, which was to complete a 2-day test. A lot of jobs may offer these, but essentially what these are is that you have to prove what you can do, and they can see how you can work on a specific thing. So say they gave me 2 tests, one for like a full body acting shot, and one for just like a sort of lip sync acting shot. And I had to complete these in 2 working days on Toon Boom using puppets. Now, I was studying hand-drawn animation because that's usually what they teach with 2D animation, but a lot of work is puppets these days. So I kind of had to learn this on the job, which was very stressful. But I learned a lot in those 2 days, and I submitted the test, and I got onto the next part of the application process, which was an on-call interview, like a video interview, and that was with that same animation director and another animation supervisor. And they just asked me additional questions, and questions such as like, oh, what would you do if you're running late on your schedule, like sort of trying to figure out how you'd problem solve and such like that. And about maybe a week or 2 again after that, I got an email saying that I'd been offered a job, and then whether I wanted it or not, and then you have to sort of sign some things off, sign NDAs, and then you have to like they offer you a salary, and you did it, you got a job. Felt like it happened very quickly because this was while I was still studying. I was making my final film. So it was a lot of pressure to sort of do these things all at once, but it worked out really well, and I was extremely lucky to be offered a job before I finished uni. But yeah, after that, I graduated, and I was expected to start work maybe 2 weeks after graduation. A lot of people in my class who were also offered the job had to start work maybe a few days after graduation, but I negotiated and I said, no, I need time to move. And they're like, okay. Projects go very quickly and they need you immediately. If they're looking for people to hire, they usually need you to jump on immediately, so you won't have much time. That's something to consider. But yeah, after all that, I started the job. I think I got the job maybe because I kept my reel very short and sweet, up to a minute. I only showed my best examples, the work I was most proud of. So you don't want to show anything where you're like, oh, don't worry about that, it's old, blah blah blah. I showed examples of acting and lip sync as well as a bit of action. And then I made my actual portfolio site nice and tidy and easy to follow. No extreme designs or lots of buttons to click, just very like quickly accessible, so they don't have to spend much time, because that can be an off-putter. And I catered to what I wanted to do most for a job, so that's like 2D character animation and possibly character design. So I didn't put any sort of layouts and backgrounds in there because I wasn't interested in that. But yeah, I thought I'd quickly flick through this PowerPoint that I made at the end of uni. One of our units was to sort of research the industry and prepare myself for entering it and getting jobs and applying and such like that. So I had this big chunky PowerPoint. I think it's like 115 slides. Don't worry, I'm not going to spend it. I'm just going to flick through it. But pretty much what I did was I like to try and stay very organized at uni, so I planned out everything I was going to do. I looked through what my current work was like. This was my current portfolio at the time. I sort of analyzed that and showed my current show reel, my current CV. I showed that I had a bit of an online presence, which helps out a little bit sometimes when it comes to connections. And then the connections I already had, so these were just people that followed me and such that I could ask for help. Then I researched into the industry. So these were a lot of lectures we actually had at the university where I made a lot of notes. One of our teachers gave me a little interview on tips for entering the industry, and he sent us an email. We had a lecture from Cartoon Saloon, and then marketing distribution. This is a lot of lectures we had about starting work at the end of our final year. I looked into websites, so here I looked at sort of average salaries and average income, where the industry is based, such like that, websites on giving advice on how to start in animation, looking at what apprenticeships are like, and maybe internships, how to apply, what you may need to know or understand. And this changes all the time because the industry is constantly evolving, so you have to keep up to date with what technologies are currently being used. Like, for example, I studied a lot of hand-drawn, where it's a lot of 2D animation now as puppets, which I didn't know much about, which I wish they told us, but whatever. Yeah, lots of this. Oh, what was that? More lectures. I looked at resources from artists online, so India Swift and Michael Doig. Sorry if I said that wrong. They have a lot of really useful stuff on their Patreon, so I took notes from that. More things from online, just like this day and age, there's tutorials and like information sheets absolutely everywhere, so it's quite not easy to research, but it's out there. A friend of mine sent me notes on like an industry talk by like Disney and DreamWorks, like what they'd be looking for in portfolios and such like that. If you really want to read these, you could probably pause if it's good enough quality, because I'm not going to read all of these. I studied Aaron Blaise and what his life was like and how he got into it. Amazingly, at the similar time, people were sharing their artist journeys, and I was like, oh, I'm going to grab some of this. So I took loads of screenshots of what people were sharing. A lot of people saying that they started out doing small jobs, like working in cafes and restaurants and such like that, and just falling into the industry by mistake a lot of the time. It's about people you know a lot of the time, so and like little jobs that you do and little things that you could show off. It's a very big part of it. I looked at Natalie Noragat's, sorry if I said that wrong as well, comic about her starting in the animation industry in LA, which I really recommend. It was amazing. It offered me a lot of insight, although it wasn't super useful to me because this is mostly LA based, and LA is like a whole creature on its own. Like, it's very different to the rest of the world. But yeah, I looked at that a lot and took notes. I looked at the Animation Guild, which is the union, the animation union in LA. I think that's the only place where there is an animation union, so they kind of make sure people are treated healthily and fairly in the industry and such like that. I think that's it anyway. And then I started contacting artists and they gave me lots of advice. So these were people that I followed who were nice enough to give me some advice. You can try this. Don't feel sad if people don't respond to you, because artists are very busy people. I was very lucky that I got a lot of responses because I follow, I'm mutuals with a bunch of artists who already worked in the industry, so I could ask them. There's a lot of stuff here. I have some friends who were working in the industry who helped me out, and they will come from different sort of backgrounds. Like my friend here, Kat, she came from a more 3D background and got a job in rigging, which is completely different from what I'm doing. I looked at LinkedIn, which is like business Facebook, which I don't think many people use, but I could be wrong. A lot of people I know don't use it, but you can get jobs through it and companies advertise work on it, so I'd recommend getting a LinkedIn if you're in uni and you haven't got one already. I was researching companies and what they look for and how to apply, how much they pay, where they're located, stuff like that. I took down notes on a lot of companies so that when I was looking for jobs, I had a list of companies I could go and speculatively apply to. Studios in Bristol, because I heard that Bristol, UK had a lot of studios, and that was one of the main places I was thinking of. And I made a little spreadsheet of all the studios and their websites and such like that, so I could easily access them in the future. Then I tried applying for an internship. I didn't get it, but I showed that I tried. I showed me researching how to write a cover letter. Kept it nice and short and sweet. Well, kind of. This one's quite long, but you make it personal and not like a copy paste, and you say what you can do, what you're interested in, blah blah blah. And then I looked at other artists' work. Oops. So I looked at the portfolios and websites of professionals to sort of use that as inspiration and guidance to what I could edit my portfolio into. So I was looking at what they really, like how they presented their work. This one was another student. This is Tori. Her website's changed since then, but I took notes on that. This is Ham. I just pretty much looked at a lot of artists to see what they did. A lot of people, laid out their work very cleanly and easy to read, because that's what's most important. Like, it doesn't matter about fancy designed websites, you just need people to see your work and see what you're best at. And make things easy to find too, because people don't want to flick forever through a website and, not find your best work. I watched videos on portfolio reviews. Aaron Blaze did a few portfolio reviews, and I took notes from the things that he said. And I'm sure there's a lot more videos similar to that. Like, he looked through a bunch of these portfolios, and I wrote down what he liked and what he didn't like and what he thought would be good for a job. I looked at the show reels of people in the industry and saw how they cut their show reels together. I noticed that some people write down notes in the corner, like down here, for what they're responsible for if it was a collaborative project. Like, for example, if you're working on a film and you did the animation but not the layout, lighting, etc., then you could note that down. They like to see your process a lot of the time, so this person included their storyboard to see how they transition from storyboard to final thing. So yeah, I looked at show reels, I looked at people's CVs, how they, laid them out and made them, because a lot of people's creative CVs are quite pretty and they're quite nice to look at, like these, for example. More professional, like CVs for other jobs tend to be a bit more plainly cut. I looked at people's business cards too, because I had to make a business card for this unit. Looked at what they presented, how they made it appealing. I looked at people's online presences. And then, using all this information that I just researched, I worked on improving my own current stuff. So I updated my portfolio website to make it a bit tidier and cleaner and easier to view, nice big pictures. I made my CV or resume very visible. I was looking at getting a domain, because it's easier to type in a domain than a long free website domain, but that costs money, so whatever. I upgraded my show reel. in accordance to what I'd learned about previous people's showreels. I did it again in April. This is my updated CV. These were me trying to make a business card and my final business card designs, and I ended up going with the oh yeah, I went with the bottom right on this one. I actually drew that picture just for a business card because I liked the top middle in this, but it was too like messy, so I did a special clean one just for this. And then I designed the backs for them as well and how I'd lay out my contact information, because email, throw your email absolutely everywhere so people can contact you. If they can't contact you, then you won't get a contact. Simple as that. Went really into detail on how I'd sign these things, how I bought them, and then this was my conclusion. So we had to write a 5-year plan, which I thought was a bit bold because you just cannot predict this industry and what things you'll fall into. But yeah, so that was all the research I did before getting a job. I feel like talking about this would have been useful because a lot of friends I spoke to said that they weren't pushed to do any kind of research like this, and a lot of people leaving uni didn't really know what to expect and how to even begin, because leaving uni is one of the most terrifying experiences of your life, because suddenly you're out of full-time education and you're expected to jump into the world and know everything and be able to afford to live and be independent, and that's just really not going to happen as easy as you think. So I think it was really good of my uni to push me to do all this research, and it really helped. I still refer back to this sometimes, although it's like some of it's really naive because you're in uni, you don't know what the heck work is like, really. Lectures can only teach you so much. You have to go out and do things. So I've definitely learned a lot from working. But yeah, so after having been offered the job, I was offered the job at the end of May, which was just about when I was finishing my film, and uni pretty much ended then, and I didn't graduate for another month. And I spent most of that month I went to the Annecy Animation Festival in France, and I also had a little family holiday. And then after that was over, I had about 2 weeks to prepare to move. So I was expected to start work mid-July, and I got the offer at the end of May. So that's probably about the time frame you could expect, depending, obviously all these things work differently, but I believe most of the time they want you to start fairly quick. So if your work is located quite a long way from where you currently live, you're going to have to organize a lot of stuff very quickly. So it wasn't too bad for me because this job was offered within my same country. So I lived and studied in England, and the studio is also in England. So I had to look online for places to stay in a city that I'd never really been to before, and I didn't really have time or the money to go up there and explore and look at my options and do a lot of house viewings and such. So I just looked on a lot of websites to find somewhere to live, found somewhere to live, did all that stuff. Had to move all my stuff up. My experience wasn't too bad because my family were there to back me up. They helped me move everything, and it wasn't too bad. It was fairly straightforward. And then 2 days after I moved in there and settled in, I had my first day at the job. So moved there on a Friday and then started on Monday. And I just used that whole weekend to explore the city and be like, I guess I live here now, and I know nothing about this place. But it was very exciting. Sort of, you're in a new city with new people, starting a new job. It's like kind of the first day of true adult life, which is quite scary. But the job was really nice. Like everyone is very friendly and very helpful. Like they know that you're less experienced and they're there to root for you. People are quite easy to talk to and ask questions, and they well, at least my animation director and such were always like, don't be afraid to message me or email me. I'll always try and make time for you, that sort of thing. So they're very supportive, which was lovely. I felt quite welcome right off the bat, and it also helps that I knew people there already, like previous classmates of mine had already been working there a few weeks. Now I've kind of covered my experience starting off. I'm going to cover sort of the great things I found about working so far. And it's kind of like you meet a lot of people with fairly similar interests, and everyone's kind of like really friendly and nerdy almost. Like you're all in animation, so you're all there because you love cartoons, or you love Disney, or you love just animation in general. Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, what have you. You all have these interests, and you can all bond over that. Animators can tend to be quite eccentric, so you know they can be very loud, very passionate, very fun-loving and bouncy and enjoyable. But you also have the other side of animators where some of them are very quiet and withheld because they're used to staying at home and practicing their craft. I fall under this category. Um, so a lot of them are very shy, and others are very loud, but they're all very friendly, or at least that's what I've sussed out so far. Um, so the work life is pretty casual. I can pretty much wear whatever I want as long as it's not inappropriate or smelly. Um, so like in the summer, I'd rock up in shorts when it was really hot. Um, I can wear all the nerdy t-shirts I want. I can wear as many hoodies as I want. I got some tatty jeans that I didn't worry about wearing. Like at the beginning, I was trying to look real professional, and now I just kind of wear whatever. And some people have rocked up in their pajamas before. I mean, it's not recommended, but people have done it and they haven't really batted an eye. So as long as you do the work, but again, this is from my experience, so don't take that to heart. It might be very different. Don't go to work in your pajamas if they don't like it. But yeah, I found that really nice. Like you can always dress to your comfort. You don't have to wear uncomfortable shoes or just black clothing like you would in some places. Um, our studio does a lot of fun little events sometimes, and they offer free food. We have a little kitchen, and they do like an Asda order every week or so, or every 2 times a week. And they get in bread and butter and milk and snacks and cereal and such like that. So you can make snacks during breaks or when you need a bit of a rest or something. Sometimes if I wake up too late to have cereal in the morning, I'll have cereal at work, which is pretty nice that I can do that. I'll just like eat at my desk, or you can eat in the kitchen or whatever. There's always stuff there on offer for you. Well, at least at my place. Also, they do little events sometimes, like every month we have free Domino's. So they order just a mountain of Domino's pizza and everyone just goes at it. And that's always a good day. And it's usually the day before payday as well. So it's a very happy day for everyone. They're getting money and they're getting pizza and everyone's in a good mood. Um, the, one of the bad things about that is the horrible food coma you get afterwards. And you can't work at the end of the day because you feel greasy and full and sleepy. But it's nice they do things like that. They've also offered things like nice Sunday walks in places of the city that people might not know about, and there have been zoo trips that people have organized, and life drawing sessions, and there's an art contest every month that you can win prizes. The prizes have been pretty good. People have won art books and sketchbooks and moleskins and art materials, and they've been really good. We also have like a health and well-being club where people organize sort of healthy events, like they bring in really healthy foods for you to try. One time they brought in lots of types of honey for people to try, and that's how I discovered my love for borage honey. Because regular honey is just like, nah. But this honey, oh, sweet. But yeah, they do stuff like that. So there's a lot of fun little events that go down in my studio, which is kind of nice. Like it breaks the monotony a bit. And it's nice to see new things and discover things, because when you're working a creative job all the time, you need a break from the creativity and like learn and explore things outside of your field a bit. So it's nice that they offer that. I talked about that one a lot. What is next on my very casual script? Oh yeah, there's a lot of diversity as far as I've seen, like in our studio at least, and from what I've seen of other studios, is that there's a lot of diverse people, which is great. Like you learn about other cultures and where they came from. There's a lot of people from the Americas in our studio, so I found it really interesting to to hear their stories and such. I remember someone showing me a picture of their hometown and they just had wild giant macaws on their balcony, and I'm just like, I can't even imagine that, like being where you live. That's amazing. Lots of people from around Europe here too, since this is there's quite a few countries that offer animation work in Europe, but England is one of them. That will be a bit trickier once Brexit happens, but not impossible, just a bit more difficult, as things aren't difficult enough already. But yeah, even when you're having a hard time sort of keeping up with deadlines and such, which can be quite difficult, people have always been there to offer a helping hand for me. If I've been struggling, I've been able to hand off shots to other colleagues who are a bit more free than I am, and my lead animators have always been very very supportive and always helping and being understanding when I've been sick or I've been slow or I've been burnt out. It's very easy to go and talk to them when I'm having a hard time, and they totally understand. It's been really nice. I was having a really bad burnout in June of this year, so I went to talk to my art director about it, because I was really, or animation director, because I was really worried that I was underperforming and being slow and delivering terrible animation. But he was like, no, it's fine, it's okay. And I felt so much better afterwards. So don't be afraid to speak up if you want a bit of help, if people give the impression that they can help. It's easy to have the mentality when you're working in these environments that, you know, oh, everyone's a professional, so they know how to do everything. And I know nothing because I'm new and I'm a graduate. But a lot of the time that's not the case. Like, they're still humans. They have a lot more experience than you do a lot of the time, but, you know, people still don't know everything. You could still offer help on certain things. Like, oh, I can't think of an example, but like, I've been in scenarios where like everyone is confused and unsure. Like, even people who have like had a lot of experience, they're trying to suss out a problem. You know, it's just normal. It's just something you'll come across. But it's very easy to fall into that mindset at the beginning that you're like, oh, I'm young, I'm inexperienced. Everyone's looking down on me. Everyone knows what they're doing. It's not always the case. We're always problem solving together as a team. And like with all work in general after uni, it's really interesting to be thrown from an environment where most people are your age into an environment where there is so much diversity in age and culture. Like, you learn a lot about just being an adult and living in general, I find. Like, I've learned from people at work who are, you know, are further in life than I am. Some people in their 30s and 40s who are dealing with issues appropriate to that age group. And it's been really interesting to hear like people talking about buying houses and such like that, which is way above me right now. People are married and have children and dogs and stuff, and it's like, wow. So it's really interesting to be in a pool of people, like your peers are like so much older than you, and you can learn so much from them. So that's been really interesting, and they can offer you more experience and insight on the industry as well, and become connections to help you get jobs later on. So that's been a bunch of positives I've found. There are some negatives I'm going to get into very, very briefly, because every studio is different, and it's sometimes the industry works in special ways. So, for example, it can be really tricky to get your leg into the industry. Like, a lot of people struggle to get their first creative job, or just their first job in general. Like, once you've finished uni, you've got that degree under your belt, you're fresh and new and happy. People generally don't want to hire graduates because they have such little experience. Like, all of their experience has been from university, and who knows what that university has taught them. Like, for example, I had all that information from researching the industry, whereas people from other unis didn't have that. But even though I did, like, it was still quite naive, and I still only had very limited experience. So a lot of people don't want to hire graduates, and if they do, they'll offer very little or no pay some of the time. Like, I think in most places you just get a starter wage. So your first job without experience, they're like doing you a favor, quotation marks, by giving you experience. So they're like, well, we don't need to pay them a lot because we're, kind of paying them an experience too. And as much crap as that is, and we all know it, sometimes it's really necessary because experience is incredibly important these days. There's a lot of competition in animation, and experience is absolutely key, as is with most jobs, it seems. Some friends of mine have really struggled to get work. I've known some people who still haven't found a creative job a year and a half later, but that's totally fine and normal. It's very disheartening, but that's completely normal, and don't worry if that happens to you. It's just hard to get your foot in the door. So just keep working on your portfolio and practicing and showing that you have the know-how. Other friends have been forced to move very far for work. A friend of mine who lived in Germany, um, the first job she found and accepted her was in Vancouver, so she had to move pretty much across the world to start her job in the industry. She's been loving it, so it's been a very good decision for her, but there's kind of visa stuff and legal things you have to deal with to do that, so it might be a thing to consider. Some people would love to move around, some people wouldn't, so keep that in mind. Some people have had to work for free just to get that experience, like I said, or they've had to take up temporary jobs in cafes, etc., to upkeep that free work, or to just earn a bit of money whilst they look for jobs. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. That's totally normal. You haven't failed. You're not a failure. That's normal. Like, for example, my contract ends February next year. And after that, I don't have anything lined up. So I will probably have to work smaller jobs for a while before I find something else. Like, that's just how it is. Especially with contract work, you may get a few months break in between where you are not earning anything, so you may have to find something else or just do it while you're traveling. That's something you'll have to consider. This industry works fairly different from other places. That's another thing, is that if you do have to move very far, you're going to have to sort out visas, because living and working in another country different to the one you're a citizen in is not as easy as we'd all like it to be, unfortunately. Um, Before, it was fairly easy for people in Europe to come and work in England because we're all part of the European Union, but England doesn't want that anymore. So it's going to be probably I'm going to need a visa if I want to go work elsewhere in Europe, and other Europeans are going to need to have a visa to come work here eventually. And also, just going to a lot of countries, you'll need visas. It's all very complicated, but just do your research and ask people for help. My friend who moved from Germany to Canada explained the visa process to me. There's like a work and travel visa that lasts 1 to 2 years, and such like that. It's easier for British people to go to Canada, for example, because of the Commonwealth. So we can apply for work and travel visas that last about 2 years, which is quite useful. So if I wanted to get a job in Canada, it wouldn't be too tricky, but still, not as easy as as we'd want it to be. But that's how the world is. Speaking of moving, a lot of places won't have an animation union. So a union, as far as I know, is sort of it helps people get treated fairly in that industry. So, for example, when people unionize, they have to be paid a certain amount. Like, they can't be paid below a certain amount, so it can make sure they can afford to live. They can't be forced to work unpaid overtime and such like that. Is kind of the gist of it. As far as I know, this is probably very wrong, but the only place I know of that has an animation union is LA, like just LA in California. Most of the big American animation companies are in LA, and they all have a union. So they're all treated very fairly, which is why a lot of people go to LA, because I think it's the most lucrative place to live for animation, but it's also a very expensive city, so, you know, figure out what you want to do. That's also where Disney is. It's where a Cartoon Network studio is. It's where Nickelodeon is. It's where DreamWorks is. It's where a lot of places are. There's like no 2D animation in LA as far as I'm aware, because of the union. They have to pay people a lot fairly. So in order to make production cheaper, they'll outsource a lot of work. So say Hollywood Films outsource pretty much all of their VFX work to Vancouver or elsewhere in Canada, because it's a neighboring country, and also they don't have unions for that, so they can pay a lot less, I mean, for VFX work. And say Disney TV shows are outsourced to Canada for animation on the Tangled series and Lion Guard, such like that. Don't quote me on that because I don't know that for sure, but as far as I'm aware, those shows are outsourced. So if you want to go into 2D animation, America's probably not the place to be, because they all treat you fairly. Which sounds great, but that means there's no work available because nobody wants to treat you fairly, which is the amazing reality of animation. But if you want to do super, super big and well in America in the animation industry, I'm pretty sure storyboarding's the best way to go. But there are better sources to look at aside from this video of me rambling, because I am English and I'm not American and I don't know. Keep that in mind, I don't know everything, just offering a few things. Also in terms of 2D, hand-drawn to be precise, which is the good old classic stuff we like 2D hand-drawn Disney, like Lion King and such like that. There's not a lot of work for that right now. As I've said before, the industry is forever changing, and technology is forever changing, so this stuff might change again. We have TV Paint and Toon Boom now, which are really good at hand-drawn. But, you know, there's not a lot of hand-drawn work right now. There's not a lot of films coming out with hand-drawn. A lot of 2D TV shows are puppet or cutout animation, which is also what I'm doing. Which I had to learn on the job because my uni was a bit outdated and didn't teach us these things, which is another thing to consider, is whether what you're learning is outdated or not. But yeah, you just need to make sure you keep up to date with the industry and what jobs are currently going, because I spent 4 years studying hand-drawn animation and then there was no hand-drawn animation available, so that's how it be, you know? I mean, it's still good for me to know, because hand-drawn animation is the fundamentals of every kind of animation, so it wasn't a waste of time. But, you know, that's something to consider. Okay, so I've done with my bad list. There'll be other things, but it really depends on the studio and the people you work with. People make all the difference. I wanted to add a bit of reassurance and a few extra notes. I've said this already, but don't be disheartened if you don't get a job right after uni. This is not expected of you at all. Because of this, because of the fact that it's quite hard to get a job right out of uni, maybe make your family aware of this. So what I did was, before I graduated, I sat my mum down and I was like, it might be a while till I actually get a job involved with what I'm studying for, you know, I might have to work in Tesco for a while, or I might have to stay at home and do commissions for a little bit. That doesn't mean I'm doing badly, it just means I'm looking. Once you're in the industry, it's as far as I'm aware, because this is the only job I've worked in so far in animation, it's easier from here. Like, getting your foot in the door is the hardest part, as far as I'm aware. Once you've been in the industry for a bit and you've had experience, you have that stuff for your resume where you can be like, yes, I've worked in a studio, yes, I've worked for clients, yes, I've worked to strict deadlines, then people will be more inclined to hire you. Also, you'll have known colleagues and friends from your workplace and they can help you get jobs. So say they may move on to another studio and they can recommend you to to their studio and hopefully help you get a job. They've made me aware of opportunities that I wouldn't have been aware of before. So once you're in, I think it's a lot more smooth sailing. It doesn't mean it will be perfectly easy from now on, because again, contracts are tricky, and depends what opportunities are up. It depends who's hiring. It depends what projects are going on. If you don't get a job, it doesn't mean you're failing or you're bad. It just means the timing is unfortunate. Okay, I'm gonna leave it there because this has been going on a lot longer than I expected it to, and I'm a little out of breath from talking. But I hope that opened up some things for you. I hope you understand a bit more about this now. Again, the industry is ever changing. It might be different when you've graduated, might be different when you get a job. But if you really love it, you'll love it. If you don't, then there's always something else for you, because it's a creative job, which a lot of people want, but that also has its impacts on your life and your mental health. Hopefully that's opened up some things. Again, do your own research. Don't trust everything I've said, because I've been working for only 1 year and only in one studio and only in England. So it's gonna be different depending on who you are, where you are, and where you work. So sorry for such a long video. I'll see you next time.